All right, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go ahead and get started. Well, let me just start by sharing a bit about my background, how I got started with Airbnb. Well, first off, I am a serial entrepreneur. I own multiple businesses. And a couple of years ago, I got started with Airbnb. And my journey began way before then, right? Because I had always known about Airbnb. In fact, years and years ago, when Airbnb first came out, I had a two-bedroom apartment and I was like, wait a minute, like let me put this other room that I'm not really using on Airbnb. And long story short, I didn't end up doing anything with it. I didn't actually list my room on Airbnb. But real estate, ever since then, it has always been something that has been in my like forefront as something that I wanted to get into. I'm not originally from Pittsburgh. I'm a transplant to here. I'm originally from Jamaica. And when I came to Pittsburgh, one of the things that I first kind of took wind of was the amazing properties and real estate that's here. And the more and more I have lived here, I've seen that, like, wow, real estate is certainly a great avenue as far as investing here. So even though I didn't necessarily plan on living in Pittsburgh, I said to myself, I've got to get my hands on a piece of property. And a couple years ago, when I really picked up the focus and put that as a really big intention in terms of buying a home. I bought a duplex and I ended up putting one of the apartments on Airbnb. And I was really inspired as well by my boyfriend. My boyfriend, around the same time, had gotten an apartment and he ended up putting it on Airbnb and it was doing really well. And the thing that really impressed me about the success that he was having is the fact that the apartment that he had on Airbnb was in a part of the city that wasn't like, the happening. It wasn't the place where when people would come here that you would think somebody would want to like stay. But I saw the bookings that he was getting, I saw the money that he was making, and I said, all right, when I close on my house, I've got to try this whole Airbnb thing. And in the back of my mind, I said, you know what, if it doesn't work, I could always go and like rent out the apartment. And that's how my journey started. So 2 years ago, I put the apartment on Airbnb and it's been a wonderful experience. Some of my immediate successes within like my first 90 days of listing my apartment, I became a super host, and we'll get into that a little bit later as far as what the perks are, how you can go about doing that, getting that done in a fast time frame if that's one of your goals. I was also able to furnish my listing, which it's a 3 bedroom, yeah, it's a 3 bedroom apartment, and I was able to furnish it for under $1,000. So as we go, I'm always looking at different ways that we can do things, that you can start your business and do it cost effectively. So that's just a bit about my background and some of the things that you are going to learn in this course. Some of the things I'm definitely going to go over is why now is the right time to start an Airbnb business. We'll talk about what are the details, what does operating an Airbnb business entail? What are some of the costs? What are some of the startup costs, the overhead, some of the maintenance things that you have to be aware of? As well as how do you start an Airbnb business if you don't own a house? Now, in my case, I got started, owning a property, but listen, you don't have to own anything. You don't have to own a property to get started. And we'll talk about and explore how you're able to do that. And also pricing your Airbnb. Okay, once you've actually, figured out where you want it to be, found the right location, how to go about pricing it, how to set up your listing so that it gets noticed and gets booked. We already talked about furnishing, doing it cost effectively, and just what are some things to expect, once your business is in operation, what are some things that, you can expect within your first few months, even your first year as a host? What are some different tips and tricks and so on? Now let's get into it. Why is now a great time to start hosting on Airbnb? And one of the reasons is the overheads, right? Like there are all sorts of business models out there, but truly when you explore and you look at becoming an Airbnb host and you compare it to what are some of the other costs with having other types of businesses, you have a little to no overhead costs. Now, little overhead costs is, great, right? Like if you own a property outrightly or you don't have to pay any mortgages or rents or things of that nature, fantastic, right? Or if you have a family member who maybe has an apartment or has a property or something they're not using, and they allow you to use that as your listing or use it as your Airbnb. So, that's a no cost scenario. But then little cost, if you are paying a mortgage or you're paying a rent, you're paying certain expenses like utilities, and we'll get into that in a lot more detail as we move forward. But the fact is, when it comes to Airbnb, you have a little to no overhead costs, right? And then I've already shared a bit about the aspect of not having to own any property outrightly. There are all sorts of ways that you can get started with your business without having to own any property. And that's a very attractive aspect of it. And then the fact that right now that there's a high demand for short-term rentals now with COVID, people are still traveling, right? And people are starting to travel more and more. But outside of that, you have people that are traveling for work, you have traveling nurses, you have entrepreneurs, you have people who are still kind of working from home or working remotely, and they're looking for other ways that and other spaces and places that they can get their work done and have an experience at the same time. So the demand for short-term rentals are at an all-time high. And then another thing that came out of the pandemic is the realization that, listen, we all have to have multiple streams of income, right? We don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket because, listen, things happen, pandemics happen. So we always want to have multiple fires, multiple logs in the fire so that when things happen with the economy, just things outside of our control, we have multiple streams to support the different needs that we have, to support our lifestyles. Another attractive aspect of it, y'all, is you do not need to have any type of degree, any particular experience, educational background. Like, anybody can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And it can ultimately become a passive income stream, right? So it can definitely be an additional stream of income, but then with having the right systems in place, it can also be a passive income stream where your business, your Airbnb business, can operate with or without you. So even if you're traveling or you're doing something else, you're working, your business can be set up to where you have a team essentially. You have your cleaner, you have your other co-host who's helping you to manage those properties while you are just overseeing and just making sure that they're doing what they need to do to make sure that you're getting those great reviews. And the other aspect of it, lastly, is the fact that you could do it according to your own schedule, right? Like, you could do it as little or as much as you want to. You have a calendar, you can determine when your listing, when your Airbnb is available for bookings, and you can just determine for your own self the amount of time that you want to invest into it as well, based on the kind of goals that you have and what you want to achieve as far as, what is that dollar amount as far as the additional income that you're looking to earn. So those are the reasons, the things that excite me about why I'm like, look, y'all you got to do this, right? The reasons why you want to get started hosting and start your own Airbnb business. So now we're going to get into some more basics and things in terms that you're going to want to be familiar with. And we're going to keep moving and grooving.